Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into something really fundamental, something deeply personal for, well, probably all of us. How much is your work tied up with who you are? Your identity, your sense of worth, even what you see for your future?
It's huge, isn't it? And the ground is constantly shifting under our feet.
Exactly. So today we're exploring how work shapes our lives in this rapidly changing economy. We'll touch on everything from some surprising historical ideas about why we work so hard.
Yeah, way back.
All the way to the really tough realities of the job market today.
Our mission really is to connect those dots, uncover some foundational ideas about work.
And see how they play out now with all the challenges and maybe opportunities in the modern economy.
Hopefully helping you understand some of the complex forces at play, things maybe you haven't thought about.
We'll be drawing on some classic sociology, Max Weber, for instance.
And some really powerful real-world stories like what's happening in coal country.
Okay, so let's start there with Weber, this idea.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
It really is.
Yeah.
The idea that our modern drive, our work ethic, might actually have roots in, believe it or not, the religious beliefs of people centuries ago.
It sounds totally counterintuitive. When I first read Weber's Protestant ethic, I thought, how could Calvinism, of all things, lead to the spirit of capitalism?
Right.
So maybe just briefly, for anyone listening, what was the core idea in Calvinism we need to grasp here? Predestination.
Exactly. Predestination was key. The belief that God had already decided who was saved and who was damned, and crucially, nothing you did could change that. It was already set.
You'd think that would make people just give up, right? Like, why bother?
That's the logical thought, yeah. But it didn't quite work out that way. You had Martin Luther first talking about the calling Beruf, the German word, meaning like a specific task or field of work God appointed for you in the world.
Okay.
Calvinism then took that idea and ran with it, fostering what Weber called this worldly asceticism.
Right. This is the fascinating part. So instead of monks withdrawing from the world, Calvinists felt driven to work methodically, diligently in the world, in their calling.
Yes. And the key thing, as you said, it wasn't about earning salvation. That was off the table.
So what was the point, though?
Well, it's about finding a sign. Success, hard work, discipline in your worldly job. They became interpreted as a possible sign you might be one of the elect, the chosen ones.
Ah, okay. So it was a way to manage that crushing anxiety of not knowing your eternal fate.
Precisely. It gave psychological relief. Work hard, live frugally, reinvest. Maybe, just maybe, that proves you're saved.
Wow. So thinking about today, that constant pressure we feel to perform, to achieve, to be productive.
Yeah.
Is it possible that's like an echo, a ghost of that old anxiety, even though the religious belief itself is mostly gone for many? We're still looking for that sign of worth.
That's exactly Weber's argument. The religious roots faded, but the ethic, the spirit remained, powering capitalism. And Benjamin Franklin is like the poster child for this.
Right. Time is money.
Exactly. All his advice, be punctual, be industrious, be frugal, be honest. These weren't just practical tips. They were framed almost as moral virtues. Why? Because they were useful for making money, which, tracing it back, was linked to that sign of being chosen.
And Weber noted that Franklin's own writing suggested it wasn't just pure selfishness. He seemed to genuinely believe these were good principles.
Yes, like a duty.
So this spirit of capitalism, this new mindset, it didn't just appear in a vacuum. It had to push against something older, right? Traditionalism.
Absolutely. Pre-capitalist societies often had this traditionalism. People worked basically to meet their customary needs, their established standard of living.
So enough to get by, but not this endless drive for more and more.
Exactly. If you could earn what you needed in 4 days, why work 6? There was resistance to earning more than necessary.
Weber mentioned something interesting about wages too, didn't he? The old view was low wages make people work harder.
Yeah, the logic was if wages are low, they have to work longer hours just to survive. But Weber pointed out that often backfired, especially for jobs needing skill or initiative. Low pay could actually reduce effort and efficiency. People weren't motivated.
Interesting. So this new spirit, hard work, saving, self-control, it wasn't universal at first. Weber saw it was stronger in certain groups, often Protestant groups like pietists.
Right. And that observation sparked his big question. How did this connection, this link between certain religious ideas and being adaptable to capitalism actually come about?
It's a powerful origin story for our work culture. Okay, so that's the root. How has the actual work itself changed? Because the economy today looks nothing like it did even 100 years ago.
Oh, completely different. We've seen massive shifts in the economic sectors. Think about 1900. About 40% of the U.S. workforce was in the primary sector, farming, mining, extracting raw materials.
40%. And today?
Today, it's maybe 1 or 2%. Tiny.
Wow.
Then came the rise of the secondary sector, manufacturing, making things.
The Industrial Revolution, factories.
Yeah, right. And now, the overwhelming dominance of the tertiary sector services. Healthcare, education, finance, retail, IT.
And manufacturing, it's not totally gone from the U.S., but...
No, but automation and technology have drastically reduced the number of people needed. Robots, advanced machinery.
So fewer workers making more stuff.
In many cases, yes. In 2018, manufacturing was only about 8% of the workforce.
You can even see this shift in schools, can't you?
Absolutely. Think about high school classes. Way back, you might have had shop class, agriculture class.
Yeah, I remember wood shop.
Now, it's accounting, psychology, computer tech, marketing. The education system adapted to prepare people for a different kind of economy.
It makes sense. Which brings us to how work itself is organized, this shift from Fordism to post-Fordism.
Exactly. Fordism, think Henry Ford, the assembly line, mass production. Simple, repetitive tasks. And tied to that was Taylorism, or scientific management, breaking jobs down into tiny, super efficient, coordinated steps.
These sound like what Weber called low-trust systems, right? Workers don't have much say or control.
Very much so. Little autonomy, strict supervision, which connect to what Marx talked about.
Alienation.
Alienation. That feeling of being disconnected from your work, from the product, from your own human potential. Your abilities feel controlled by something else, the machine, the system.
So how does that idea of alienation apply today? Maybe not everyone works on an assembly line. What about, say, a gig worker or someone in a huge corporate office? Can they feel alienated too?
I think absolutely. It might shift from alienation from physical craft to maybe alienation from the purpose of the work, or feeling like a tiny cog in a giant machine, even as an intellectual job. Your creativity or time feels like it serves some abstract corporate goal you don't connect with.
Okay. So then we move into post-Fordism. What does that look like?
Post-Fordism is more about flexibility. Flexible production, smaller batches, mass customizations, getting your sneakers personalized online.
Okay. Global supply chains too, right? Parts coming from all over.
Yes. Hugely important. Components for one single product, like your phone, might come from dozens of countries. Factories are competing globally now.
That sounds efficient for companies, maybe good for consumers who get variety. But what about the workers?
Well, that's the rub. This flexibility, this global competition, for many workers, particularly in countries like the U.S., it's led to less security.
How so?
Pay cuts, benefits being reduced or eliminated, jobs moving overseas to places with lower wages or fewer regulations. Job insecurity has definitely increased for a lot of people.
And this isn't just in factories anymore. We're seeing more precarious work across the board.
Yes. And alongside the formal economy, there's the informal economy.
What exactly is that?
It's all the work and transactions happening outside of regular taxed, monitored employment. Think street vendors, unreported cash jobs, bartering. It's huge in many developing countries and often involves more women. It's work, definitely, but without contracts, protections, or benefits. More precariousness again.
So the picture is one of more interdependence. We rely on people globally for everything, but maybe less stability for the individual worker.
That seems to be a major trend, yes.
Okay, let's ground this now. These big economic shifts, these ideas about work ethic, how do they impact real lives? The article you shared about the coal economy in Greene County, Pennsylvania, that really brings it home.
It really does. You have a place like Greene County, historically incredibly dependent on coal mining. Consol Energy's Bailey Mine complex there is, or was, the largest underground mine in the U.S. The whole local economy was built around it.
A single resource economy. That sounds risky.
Hugely risky. And it creates this intense conflict. You have activists like Veronica Coptis.
Right, she was fighting against the environmental damage, the pollution, the health problems.
Exactly. The sludge spills, the damaged streams, the respiratory diseases, devastating impacts.
But at the same time,
those mines provide thousands of well-paying jobs. One estimate said each mining job supported almost 4 other jobs locally.
Wow. So what does work hard even mean in that context? You're working hard to support your family, but the work itself might be harming your community or environment.
It's a brutal dilemma. There are no easy answers.
We hear from miners like Frank Zacconi in that piece. He was making good money, 6 figures.
Yeah, and feeling real pride in his work, seeing coal as essential, powering the country.
He talked about needing the job for car loans, school loans, supporting his kids.
It's his livelihood.
Yeah.
And he voted for politicians who promised to save those coal jobs.
So for him, that mining job, it is his calling in a way, right? It provides identity, purpose, supports his family, even as the industry itself is declining. It feels like Weber's idea playing out centuries later.
That's a really interesting connection. The calling provides, even if the context is fraught. But the harsh reality, despite political promises, is that coal is fading. Market forces, cheaper natural gas, renewables, some regulations, it's not just one thing.
And that hits people hard. There was Joseph Cornelius Culp, a third-generation miner who lost his job.
Yeah, and he talked about retraining programs feeling pointless.
Because, as he said, no job making solar panels was going to pay someone without a college education a six-figure salary.
That quote just cuts right to the heart of the transition challenge, doesn't it?
It really does. What happens when the well-paying job you could get without a degree disappears? Does college automatically pay off? Is that path even available or affordable?
It raises huge questions about pathways to the middle class, especially for families who relied on that one specialized, high-paying industrial job.
And the sacrifices are real. Veronica Coptus's husband, Donald Fike, also a former miner.
He ended up working at Walmart, right? A massive pay cut.
Yeah, and Veronica said something like, everybody's going to have to sacrifice something. That's just stark.
It is. And this individual struggle connects to broader issues of inequality in the economy.
The numbers are pretty staggering.
They really are. Look at CEO pay versus average worker pay. In 2020, for the biggest U.S. companies, the ratio was something like 351 to 1.
351 times more for the CEO than the average worker.
Yep. The average CEO making over $24 million. And that gap is way wider in the U.S. than in most other industrialized nations.
What's driving that, besides just decisions in the boardroom? Does corporate structure play a role?
It certainly does. Corporations dominate the global economy, and you see rising concentration monopolies where one company dominates, or oligopolies where just a few firms control a market.
Less competition means they can potentially coordinate on prices or suppress wages.
It reduces competitive pressure, yes. Limits options for consumers and workers.
And these corporations are global now, transnationals.
Exactly. Take Walmart, often cited as a model of 21st century capitalism. Their supply chains wrap around the globe. They can source products from wherever costs are lowest, often leveraging low-wage labor in developing countries. That puts pressure on wages everywhere else, including back home.
And the counterbalance to corporate power historically was unions. What's happened there?
Unions aim to level the playing field for workers. They peaked in the U.S. back in the 1950s, representing over a third of the workforce.
But membership has fallen dramatically since then.
Steadily declined. Part of that is the shift away from large-scale manufacturing, the rise of the service sector, and the flexible nature of post-Fordist work. It's harder to organize.
So less worker power to push back on wages or conditions.
That's generally the trend, yes.
Okay, so that's the challenging present. Looking ahead, what about the future of work? Automation keeps coming up.
It's a huge factor. Automation obviously eliminates some jobs, but it also creates new ones and new kinds of services.
Like ride-sharing apps or Amazon's massive logistics network.
Right. But those same innovations can put traditional taxi drivers or local retailers out of business.
So the big question is, do the benefits, maybe lower prices or more convenience for consumers, outweigh the costs to the workers or businesses being displaced? It's not clear, is it?
Not at all clear. It's a major debate. And it ties into this idea of the knowledge economy.
What do we mean by that exactly?
It means a society where the economy is based more on producing knowledge and information, rather than just physical goods. Think R&D, high-tech, design, software, marketing, specialized consulting.
Work that requires handling information, often needing higher education or specific technical skills.
Yes, and it's linked to consumers who are also more technologically savvy.
Which leads back to the tough question. Who gets to participate in this knowledge economy? Is it creating opportunity, or is it leaving people behind?
That's the crux of it. For someone like Joseph Culp, the miner we talked about, without that college degree, those high-paying jobs seem out of reach. The specialized skills he did have are no longer in demand.
It really challenges the idea that just working hard is enough, if the economy no longer values the work you know how to do. And it puts immense pressure back on education and whether families can afford it or make it on potentially lower single incomes.
Exactly. And remember, work isn't just about a paycheck. It gives us social connections, structure to our day, a sense of identity, of contributing.
But if work is becoming less stable, more part-time, more contract or contingency work, even for professionals,
Hmm.
what does that do to our sense of security and identity?
It creates precarity. How permanent do you feel your job is? It's interesting, in many other developed countries, the average working week has actually gotten shorter since the 80s.
But not so much in the US.
The U.S. seems to trend more towards part-time work increasing, which often means less stability, fewer benefits.
So, wrapping up, the future feels pretty uncertain, doesn't it? You see the resilience in places like Greene County, people like Veronica Coptis fighting for a better future,
Absolutely. There's hope and struggle side by side.
but also this deep uncertainty about where things are headed, especially for those whose livelihoods were tied to older industries, all connected to these fundamental questions about work and what gives it worth.
It really makes you reflect on how much those old ideas, maybe even Weber's calling, still echo in how we value ourselves and others based on work, even if the economic reality has completely changed.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the surprising religious roots of our modern work ethic,
Way back with Weber.
all the way through the huge economic shifts, primary, secondary, tertiary sectors, Fordism to post-Fordism.
And landing on the tough realities faced by people in places like coal country and the rising inequality we see.
We've talked about why some people seem to thrive while others struggle, even working just as hard. The challenges for families making ends meet, the questions around college.
And how automation and the knowledge economy are reshaping everything, creating both possibilities and real anxieties.
It really highlights how these aren't just abstract economic trends. They shape our identities, our communities, our sense of hope or uncertainty about the future.
Those historical forces, those economic structures, they have deep personal consequences.
So maybe the final thought to leave everyone with is this. Considering everything we've discussed, the historical baggage, the economic turbulence, the human cost, what does it genuinely mean to find worth in your work today? When the definition of work itself keeps changing, what's your calling, maybe, in an economy that prizes knowledge, flexibility, but perhaps offers less security? And maybe the biggest question, how do we build an economy where everyone has a chance to find not just a job, but purpose and prosperity?
That's the challenge ahead, isn't it? A lot to think about.